Hello everyone, my name's Pyra and welcome to Saturday Morning Scuttlebutt, where I talk about my art making for this week. Yes, I haven't done a Scuttlebutt in over a month because I was doing vlogs. We're back to this format. I think it works better. Anyways, we'll talk about all that stuff later now. And there may still be vlogs in the future for like specific events, but not like a weekly one. I think my regular life is kind of too boring for a vlog. What else have I been doing these last couple weeks since the last vlog went up? Well, trying to declutter my house by hyper-cluttering 2 rooms upstairs, and making weekly donation runs for other stuff. But mostly I've been doing a lot of cartooning and working on books and stuff. So this week I had the last of my painting classes that I've been taking. At this point, I don't have plans for any more other than the same instructor, Mitchell Villa, is doing a workshop on getting into abstraction. That'll be in August, so that's probably going to be the next time you hear me blathering about classes and stuff. I don't know. What I do, I went into the Draculea.com website and I hid a whole bunch of stuff because I had a whole lot of blog and random crap on there. I'm like, yeah, I'm probably going to rebuild it as a portfolio site, but I thought first things first, let's get the crap off of there. So it's doing that. I mentioned deciding to scrap vlogs. I also decided to scrap another thing I was doing weekly, which was the Noah's Archipelago, the Diary of Noah Thorsen. Basically on Tuesday mornings, for anyone who hadn't seen, I would write like a little 600 to 1,000 word thing as Noah, as if we were reading his diary, and I would do one illustration for it. And it was kind of fun to begin with when I started it last year. In fact, I do plan that I'll eventually have a book that's the Diary of Noah Thorsen, but that's kind of down the road. And I kind of thought, I don't know. It's good for brainstorming in some senses, to like break through a block or a rut. But it was starting to get to the point where I was like, like this Tuesday, I was just like, I have no idea what I'm going to write for Noah. So I just decided not to. So, and I now have plenty of material for when I eventually do that book. So there's that. It didn't seem to be getting much traction with my followers when I post on any of my social media platforms, but also Facebook's where I have the biggest following for Noah's Archipelago. And to be honest, Facebook has really throttled organic reach over, well, actually the last decade, but particularly the last, it seems to be getting worse even since I started Noah's Archipelago in 2022. So I have like 1,700 followers there, and on average, when I look into my insights, Facebook tells me that it showed any one of my posts to about 18 to 30, which is like abysmal. It's because they want me to pay them to boost my posts. Well, I post 4 times a week, and the minimum is, I think, $2 a day, and you have to do it at least 4 days. So it's like, do I want to pay $40 a week US minimum to Facebook for the privilege of having my content shown to people who already said they wanted to see it? I don't really see the ROI on that, and it's not like doing 1 post a week or 1 ad a week would actually boost any of my other stuff. That just signals to Facebook, hey, we got a live one, we got a sucker. Anyways, so maybe people who actually saw those Noah's Diary posts enjoyed them, but nobody was seeing them. So anyways, we could go into a whole rant about Facebook. And Facebook, anyways, Facebook organic reach and all that. I have friends who were getting, when they made that change, like overnight, they went from getting like 150 likes on every post to getting like 5. So anyways, that's their business model, and you kind of just go, well, you know what, screw you. Anyways, I may end up editing that whole thing out, but so that was another thing that I stopped doing this week. One thing I did do this week is I made a priority list of my projects. So the idea being, and I don't know how, it seems both feasible and non-feasible, and that is to have 6 books out per year. Now that's not like writing War and Peace, right? Like that's, the first would be a Noah's Archipelago anthology. Now I've been doing that comic since 2022. I am like 95% done the first anthology, and it's only gonna be like, I think 9 months worth of content for that. So, because I want to kind of keep it under 200 pages, so it's going to be expensive to print it anyways. So once that's done, like I'm working on content I've already done. It's just bringing it in, assembly and editing, right? And the first one, I think I've talked about this on previous Scuttlebutts. The first one's the worst because I had to re-letter every single comic because of potential licensing problems with the font I'd use, blah, blah, blah. Second one, I'm going to have to re-letter half of them. So the second one's also going to be a bit of a hard slog. After that, I think I can just like import the comics and out they go. So that'll be a little easier. But anyways, so hoping to have a Noah's Archipelago anthology released yearly. We'll see. A coloring or activity book featuring my characters, which I don't think I would, because I've got Noah's Archipelago and I've got Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat, right? And Myles Maarav is part of the Ricky world. There sometimes is crossover. In fact, in the last month, the Noah's Archipelago story arc has been Ursula having an assignment about how would she improve the world, and she decided she was going to suggest that they replace the school cafeteria with basically a Chuck E. Cheese, but a cheese-y rats. So there was a little bit where Ricky comes in because he's who she goes to act as a expert, right? So there's a little bit of a crossover. Generally speaking, they're separate. So my thought would be to have maybe a Noah coloring book and then a Ricky coloring book. Activity books would be kind of more for Ricky, like, you know, the old joke about rats in mazes and stuff like that, rat racing. So we may have some of that sort of stuff. And I think it's like the average adult coloring book seems to have about 50 some pages. So if I did one a week, right, like to do one a year, it doesn't seem out of the picture, out of the realm of possibilities. So that's something. The first one will be a coloring book featuring the many jobs Noah has held, however briefly, but he has had a lot of jobs. So and then I would do, once that one's out, I would start working on a Ricky one. Then the next thing on the priority list would be a Ricky or Myles or both together graphic novel, because Noah mostly is a webcomic, and then I'm doing other stuff around that. But Ricky, I was doing some marker cartoon sketches, but I think it works better as a longer format. So graphic novels, and that's what I work on Monday and Fridays in my live streams, right? I'm currently actually working on 2 books, because there's the Myles Maarav's Pursuit of Happiness book that I'm working on Mondays. And then there's Ricky B Goes to Sea that I've started working on Fridays. It's hard to say which one's going to get finished first. I think the art for Myles will be done first, because that's kind of an alphabetical, and I'm working on L right now, so I'm halfway done. But I'm not just going to put out like random art. Like it needs text and stuff to be inserted in between. I have a whole video actually on the Myles Maarav project, so I will link that below, or maybe I put up a card or whatever. Anyways, there will be a link somewhere around this video. If you want to check that out, I talk a lot more about the idea and the process and whatnot. So Ricky B Goes to Sea is, I think, 110 pages, and it's all inked, or it will all be inked, the dip pen by hand, and then I've got to scan it and all that. But the Ricky stuff is planned. Like that book is, most of it's what I call blue lines, so the non-photo blue under drawings. So I really, at this point, I just have to go through page by page and ink it, and then once everything's inked, then it'll be like a week of spending quality time with my scanner, scanning it in, photoshopping any things I screwed up, and then we can start assembling the book, right? Whereas the Myles, the art's a lot closer to being done, but then I don't have a story. I may, anyways. So that's the part that's going to be a problem afterwards, whereas the Ricky stuff I think might actually go faster because of that purpose. So, and then what I was about to say is the Myles book actually might end up being a collection of short stories, but where I've made a drawing. And the other thing with the Myles is I don't have a plan for the whole book. It's like every spread is based on a letter of the alphabet. Again, it's in the other video. But I have no idea until I start that week, like time to do that spread, what it's going to be. So I have no story and whatnot. But they're all random. And so they're all kind of random, but that would work for a collection of short stories. So this comes to the next kind of book that I would like to put out, one a year, which again, that might be completely unrealistic. It might be one every 2 years, and that would be short story collections with illustrations for each story. Not like illustrated to the point of a graphic novel, but there's an illustration at the beginning or a spread at the beginning, and then your short story, and then maybe there's an illustration at the end before we have the illustration for the next story, right? And I would kind of rotate that between Myles. Well, Myles is in a lot of the Ricky stories, and Ricky's in some of the Myles stories, right? So he's not in any of the Myles pictures yet because that was conceived as a separate project. But anyways, so the rats and Noah, right? And alternate back and forth. I have a Ricky one that is about half written, and that's the working title of that is A Year in Ratsville. Myles does show up in that. I don't have any illustrations for it, but anyways, and the whole the Diary of Noah Thorsen would then become one of these short story books. Whether I would make it just the diary entries that I've written, and the ones that have been written are on the Noah's Archipelago website. So again, there'd be a link below for that. The comics are way out of date. I think I said this in my last number of Scuttlebutts. Like, I have to get the comics up to date on Noah's Archipelago. I still have to. But the Noah's Diary stuff is all absolutely up to date. Anyways, whether I would just have it with the diary entries and throw in some illustrations and call it a day, or whether I would take those diary entries and then write short stories based on them, I don't know. It's down the road. As it stands right now, it's kind of more of what they call a book of vignettes. Another book idea that I've been kicking around actually for, I think, 2 years now, would be to write some kids' books, like chapter books, where Ursula is the star of the show. I actually have a couple outlined, but I would actually have to sit down and write the whole thing. And then it's kind of a deal about, will there kind of be problems with me writing a kid's book with Ursula, and then like considering that there's some stuff that's maybe not conventional, so maybe not the right word, but I could sort of see like some people be like, I don't want my kid reading a book by this broad. Like, her other comic project is this alcoholic rat who likes doing magic mushrooms, and like, even though I wouldn't have that stuff in the Ursula stuff, I don't know. So it's something that's an interesting idea to me. Like, what would I have enjoyed reading when I was Ursula's age? that kind of maybe reflected more where my head was at or my dysfunctional family was at or whatnot. That's way more explanation than that project really needed, because it's at this point, it's very nebulous. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about for a while is I don't teach workshops or classes at this point. I have actually been asked, though, if I would teach, my contact at my local arts council, when she found out that that I'm working on graphic novels, she's like, "Oh, you could teach that." I'm like, let me put the first one out first, let me finish one, go through the process of self-publishing and put it out. Because otherwise it would be like, in theory, this is how it happens. I don't know. I haven't done it, so I wouldn't feel comfortable teaching until I had a book self-published. But I have been asked, and I do regularly get questions, like even on the most recent Friday stream, somebody was asking me, "Oh, how do I improve my drawing?" Or pardon me, maybe that was Monday. I think that was Monday. Anyways, in the last week or so, someone in the chat was asking me about tips for how to improve drawing. Somebody else is asking about their kid is 17 and is a talented artist, but they don't, for whatever reason, they're not really drawing a lot now. They're not working on that skill. And I mean, hey, 17, you're distracted. You got a lot of other stuff going on, right? But serve some ways to get them drawing more. I've had people, when if I'm in a painting class and I'm drawing one of my mouse guys like Ricky or whatever, I get people asking, "Oh, who is he?" Blah, blah, blah. And I start telling the story, and, of course, and I kind of blather on as you can tell I do, right? And then people will be like, "Wow, that's really, how do you come up with all this stuff?" Anyways, so I have kind of thought maybe I should do a book or two, or have a series of books, and kind of talk about, writing, world building, characterization, and kind of keep it to stuff that I know, which would be, I've been cartooning my whole life, and I've had other web comics I've done in the past, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm actually thinking I may start with some videos, probably not till like April, but where I'll film myself drawing something, just so you have something to look at and not just my face. I say that as I'm sitting here and you're looking at my face. But having something where I'm demonstrating art or whatnot, and then have a voiceover where I talk about a topic, like whether it's stuff like 5 books I found really helpful for world building, or 5 places I look for inspiration, or how to improve your drawing. Anyway, stuff like that. I may start doing voiceover videos like that. Like that. But then I would have a script, so I could compile the scripts at the end of every year and expand them into a little book or something like that. So it's a very long-winded what I'm planning to do in the long term, right? But let's keep with the last couple weeks since I last put up a vlog. Another change is, and this is very recent, I'm filming this on Thursday evening. Eventually I may do this as like a Saturday morning live stream, but right now, anyways, we're still pre-recording for now. I kind of had the feeling halfway through the Tuesday live stream, I've been doing them like marker sketches and brainstorming and whatnot, but I kind of had this thought, like, why am I doing marker sketches? I have other stuff I could be doing that would probably be more interesting for people watching or whatnot, and that then is showing off my actual drawing abilities, because my brainstorming is really rough. Anyways, I was thinking, well, why don't I because I work on like to be finished work, inking on Mondays and Fridays, maybe I could do something similar on Tuesdays. And then that had me thinking, and I've wanted to do calendars, and I haven't gotten organized on it the last couple years. So I think what I'm going to start working on is a calendar project that'll get me at least the next. I probably won't. I'm not sure if I'm going to start this week. I think I'm going to start this change in April, because that gives me some time to like plan themes and thumbnail out drawings and what the drawings would be. But it would be 2 drawings on a Tuesday live stream. Probably be black and white inking, or they'll be colored ink, but it'll be pen and ink, like dip pen work. And they will be a calendar for Noah and a calendar for Ricky and Myles. And I would just do 2 of those drawings every Tuesday on stream. That'll be starting in April. Sooner than that, I'm gonna, I think, do some like greeting cards or something like that. So there's still gonna be me finishing something that will eventually be for sale. And I think that's enough blathering about planning that I did this week, eh? So, finishes. Let's finally see something other than me on screen. So we've got some Noah's Archipelago cartoons going through. We are wrapping up that speech little arc. I guess this is the way that seems normal to me, but I have to remember you're looking at the other way, so it'll be this way. So Noah has been getting yelled at by Ruth, because Ruth also teaches at Ursula's school, and Ursula's teacher, Miss Fardamar, and her friends, and Miss Fardamar had explained about she can't give Ursula a good mark on her speech because she used her pet rat as an expert source, and Ruth is horrified because there are no rats in my house. So then she starts nagging Noah about how he needs to move the compost bins because of attracting rats, and now Noah is going and having to have conversations with Ursula. So those are the comics. We're just going to see 3 of them because at the time when I'm editing this, I will not have finished the Saturday comic yet. That's another thing in planning. I need to start working ahead more. I feel like I said that in previous Scuttlebutts too. Moving on. Whips. All right, so we're going to be seeing the inked thing that I did for Myles on Monday's live stream. What I'm going to start doing after next week is actually lengthening those Monday and Friday live streams, and I'll be doing 2 pages. So when I start the M spread for the Myles book, that'll be 1 stream. And it means I'll finish up that book's art sooner in my schedule, but I'll just start working on some of those drawings I need for like the short story books and whatnot by that point. But we just have the 1/2 so far this week of the L spread. We will do the second half this coming Monday. And L is for Lakeside Ladiesmen. So we've got Crazy Larry Maarav, the original Most in Used Car Czar, who is Myles' dad. Next week we will have Myles' brother on the other page. But Myles and Myles' dad hanging out by the shore of the lake. And Crazy Larry has some female friends who totally love him for his personality and not the fact that he's like owns a bunch of car dealerships and is rich. So there's that. As one of my viewers said, well, this is definitely not Disney. That is not Minnie Mouse. It's like, no, the only thing that's Minnie is the bikini is kind of Minnie. Anyways, and for Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat, I'm thinking editing wise, instead of what I would have done on the stream last night from when I'm posting this, we'll have what I did last week. Just so I have more turnaround time for editing. So last week I started, actually for the last couple weeks, I've started inking from the front of Ricky B Goes to Sea forward. Up until now, I have inked several pages, but they've been in random order. Now we're going to start plowing through. And again, I keep doing this, which is normal because I'm like reading right to left. I guess for you guys, plowing through goes that way. Anyways, so the first piece is the frontispiece. This story, Ricky B Goes to Sea, is a very, very silly story. And I had the idea that it would become even funnier and even sillier if I added in a bunch of the elements that would be in a more serious book, like a academic book or a work of literature or whatnot. And one of those is the frontispiece, which goes on the side next to the proper title page. Will go here, but it's kind of a more traditional thing. I don't know, even in elite literature, literary fiction, I don't know that they really do frontispiece illustrations anymore, but it used to be standard until probably the last few decades. So we've got Ricky and his girlfriend Baby. Ricky's dressed up as a sailor, and he's got his little ship wheel. And so, you know, it's a bit of a teaser for what's going to be in the story, although he doesn't wear a sailor suit again. So I'll give that much of a spoiler alert. But anyways, we have Ricky and Baby standing on the pier, being all nautical and whatnot. Then we go to the actual first page of the story, wherein Ricky is passed out, face down on the floor next to his bed. He didn't make it into the bed, although his feet are touching his bed. And it's a Monday morning, and the caption, "It was a Monday morning when God spoke to me." So that is the opening line of the book. And then, because I finished inking that on stream probably an hour and 15 minutes in, but I was like, I'm going to start streaming a little longer, make it a 2-hour stream. So we flipped over, we started page 2. So Ricky is trying to make sense of this voice that he's heard calling his name. And we've got in the middle our little Ricky's remembered hallucination where he's like one with the tree, but also his roots become like octopus legs and whatnot. And he's got a bunch of random languages talking about divinity or something like that. Offhand, we've got cuneiform, which I'd have to go look it up because I copied that out I started working on this book in 2023, so it's been a couple years. I don't remember what it says. And once upon a time, a long, long ago, I'll try and keep this brief because I know I ramble on, but long, long ago in the 1990s, I got accepted into art school. I crashed and burned very quickly because Emily Carr is a very conceptual art school, and I was told there by one of the instructors, your work is very illustrative. It was not meant as a compliment. So I didn't fit in. Anyways, I kind of like tucked tail and ran to, I registered for my UBC January 1997 classes in like the second week of September 1996. So like 2 weeks in, a week and a half into foundation year at Emily Carr, I was like, I'm out of here. So anyways, when I was at UBC, when I was trying to decide what I would do, this is back when I was like teenage occultist. Well, I can't say teenage, I was an occultist until 3 years ago. But I was really into Sumerian black magic. It's so cringe looking back, but I was really into that. I wanted to become a Sumerian expert and like look at and decipher tablets like the Maklu tablet and stuff like that. That's what I thought I was going to do with my life. So I had an interest in the Sumerian language. And anyways, the thumbnail version is to become a Sumerologist. You have to study Sumerian at the PhD level. There's like there's 5 or maybe 6, maybe 10, but I think just 5 universities on the planet where you can do that. To qualify for one of those programs, you would have had to study Babylonian culture and archaeology, which is to say the actual language is Akkadian, and you learn cuneiform at the master's degree level. And there's like 10, I don't know, maybe a dozen, but there's very few schools on the planet where you can even do the master's level stuff. And the way you prep for that at your bachelor's is you would have to do some archaeology, and at UBC that was within the anthropology department, and then you would have to study a Semitic language, preferably classical Hebrew, and archaeology of the Near East. So they've changed how the departments work now, but back in the 90s that was in the religious studies department. So anyways, and I was terrible at Hebrew. Absolutely. I'm terrible at languages in general, so in retrospect, this is all hilariously stupid. But anyways, I remember going to the bowels of the main library at UBC when I was there, and even though I was like getting like my science requirement or whatever, or like geology or whatever classes I was taking that first term, I was like going to the bowels and I was finding books from the 1940s that were like lexicons for Sumerian and cuneiform. So even though who cares now? And actually my last book purge, I got rid of a bunch of books I had, like The Ancient Near East by George Roux, or Ancient Iraq by George Roux, and old like Sumerian mythology. Like I've gotten rid of a bunch of that stuff, but I did look up cuneiform. And then there's Sanskrit, which I think, I'm not sure which of the Hindu texts is from. I was going to say Rig Veda. There's Tibetan Tibetan is from the Heart Sutra, and I think actually what that one actually says is just it is good, it is good, like, because it had to be something that was short enough to fit. Anyways, there's Sanctus Sanctus, which is the Holy 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 Catholic prayer in Latin. There's Hebrew there, which I think says something about keeping the Sabbath day, something like that. So anyways, Ricky's having his trip. Or he's not having his trip, he's remembering his trip, and then he's concluding that God would probably remember that he don't speak none of them fancy languages, just regular. So anyways, and then next week, I think page 3 I inked like months ago. So what I'm going to be doing yesterday, if you're watching this when it's posted, or tomorrow as I'm saying it in recording, is I will be inking, I think it's page 4 and 5, and it's the spread where the voice gives the message to Ricky. Now, Ricky is not a liar, but he is a misunderstander, and Ricky's the narrator. So is this actually what God said to Ricky? Who knows? It's what Ricky thought he heard. And then other whips, it's behind me. I'm going to insert a picture for details. So this is actually for the Cowichan Valley Fine Arts Show. I think I said this in my last vlog. I have registered for that show, which is in May. This is the painting that I'm going to put in it. So I got work to do. Although it's getting, just in the last week, it's gotten a lot closer to being done. So yeah, I got to work on the trees and a little more on the pavement. And after that, I think we're on to the paint pen layer. That's always my finishing layer. Now, let's say a new segment for these Scuttlebutts, Doodle Zone, from brainstorming and some quick sketches. So the Tuesday brainstorming stream was themed around safari. So we've got Myles standing on the back of a giraffe. We've got Baby looking at a panda. And there was another one I did of Ursula, but by that point I was just like, I don't know. I ran out of steam. And at that point I was all like, next week I'm not doing this. Anyways, so we'll skip over that. And previous finishes, we're going to skip that this week. I think I've been talking long enough. Haul, if any. So, I sometimes go out antiquing in Chemainus and whatnot. Not very often, but I did find these. A couple of old copies of Punch magazine. Obviously, that one's Boy George. And because I love 80s rock and whatnot, I was just like, oh, I have to grab that. And then this one is actually from the 70s. And the art in these is pretty fun. I mean, and also, of course, it's comedy writing and whatnot, which I haven't had a chance to sit down and actually read these yet. I was just like grabbed them based on the covers, but yeah. And I love the little line illustrations and stuff. So I don't have much of a collection of old Punch. In fact, do I have any? I might have 1 or 2 issues of Punch somewhere in my bookshelves. But I used to read Mad Magazine all the time. And even Cracked. Cracked was never as good. And Cracked.com, never mind. But anyways, I'm looking forward to digging into these. And they did have some other ones there, so I might grab more next time I'm in the area, or I kind of flipped through, and if I didn't recognize who was on there, like, I mean, I do recognize Rod Stewart's on here and whatnot. So, so this is kind of like the combination of like comics, because like growing up, I read Bloom County, and well, I read pretty much all the newspaper comics. I'm more from the newspaper comics end of things. I think I've said that before, right? Than comic book comics. So, but I love that stuff. Like, I mean, I think I've said before, I don't know if I've shown it, I have a tattoo of Dogbert on my ankle. Like, like, love it, that sort of stuff. I like weird animation and stuff like that. Like, one of my favorite shows is Kevin Spencer, which is this really screwed up Canadian comedy thing from, I guess, maybe it was in the late 90s, but I think more like the early 2000s. I could be wrong on my dates. If I am, I'll flash them across my face right now. But like Kevin Spencer, and is this like show about like a dysfunctional welfare family in somewhere in Ontario type of thing. And so it's kind of like, if you think about like a cross between Trailer Park Boys and not The Simpsons when they were huge on Fox, but like the first little snippets of The Simpsons when it was still on the Tracy Ullman show. Like, if you kind of, anyways, that's one of my favorite shows. So like cartooning, comics, like newspaper comics, funny comics and stuff like that. And then I also love 80s rock and rock, anything from like hard rock, classic rock and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, I have to grab these. These are both things, right? Anyway, so that was a haul. And then the other thing, actually last day of class, my instructor Mitchell Villa comes in. He had to go grab something from his truck. He came back. He's like, does anyone want a giant book about Michelangelo? Because otherwise I'm going to donate it. Like, I don't need it anymore. Nobody else grabbed it. I was kind of eyeballing. I'm like, I'm going to grab it. That thing weighs a ton. But it's the complete works of Michelangelo. So I will be flipping through this for sure. Anyways, so that was my other haul. I'm not going to hold it up any further because it weighs a ton. If you have spiders to kill, you want a book like this. Or if you just don't feel like getting dumbbells, just do bicep curls with a book like that. Anyways, so, well, that kind of leads into a little bit, what have I been watching or reading this week? Where has my inspiration come from? I will say that, it's Lent and I am Catholic now. I know what I said before, but that was then. This is now. Not pagan anymore. I know some people would say otherwise who are from other denominations, whatever. So we do the give something up for Lent thing. And I kind of decided what I would give up was some of the rude and crude and hilarious gossipy commentary shows I love to watch on YouTube. Oh, that is so hard. You see the little clips coming up from like one of my favorite shows out of Florida. I'm like, it's okay. You can watch it after Easter. So far I'm actually sticking to it, which is surprising. But so anyways, I have not been watching, I've still been watching a lot of YouTube stuff, but I've been trying to watch, more like sophisticated stuff. As opposed to the trash I normally watch. But technically the giving up thing was for YouTube shows, right? So therefore it's totally fine for reading what I've been reading is Alan Niven's book, Sound and Fury. Alan Niven he started working, I think in the 70s for Virgin Records, and then he moved to, I've read he has the story in the book, but, anyways, I already forget the details about how he ended up in LA, but he ended up he worked for an indie label, and then he became a band manager. So he was the manager for Great White. I know the first thing most people think of with Great White nowadays is the fire, unfortunately, which is tragic, but this is going long back, back in the day. He's the one who kind of got them to the top of the charts and into heavy rotation with stuff like Face of the Day and got them label deals, etc., etc. He had something to do with Motley Crue. I don't know if he was, I think I don't know if he was actually their manager or if they were just in the scene and he knew them. He might have had actually distribution for Motley on their first record or something. He was friends with Tom Zutaut, who was the A&R rep, who worked with Motley Crue, and then who ended up signing Guns N' Roses. And Guns N' Roses is like my favorite band from when I was a kid, when I really should not have been listening to Guns N' Roses. It's okay, the lyrics went way over my head. But Alan Niven was also Guns N' Roses' manager. So, and like, he's the one who took them from the clubs in LA to the big time. Like, they had briefly a different manager in the early part of their club days, but very quickly Alan came in. So anyways, he's got a ton of hilarious stories in there and some very disturbing ones. It's just kind of a collection of vignettes type of thing from those days, and it is hilarious. One of the things that had me laughing the last couple weeks is he talked actually about Jack Russell, who was the singer for Great White. And Jack was, he had chemical issues off and on, probably more on than off. But anyways, there was this incident where Jack was driving the tour bus, which he shouldn't have been doing, and he sideswiped like a highway divider, so he messed up the tour bus. Anyways, it's clear that Jack was inebriated of some sort. And so Alan tells the story of going, when they get to the hotel room, ripping everything apart, going through Jack's luggage, all this, going, where the hell are the drugs? And Jack's just sitting there smiling. He can't find them. They're not on Jack. They're not in any of his luggage. They're not in any of his gear, none of his clothes, like none of the suitcases. Like, he cannot find these drugs. And then one of the tour crew kind of later takes him aside and says, I don't want to be a snitch, but did you look under his weave? This was a bit of a revelation to me. I had posters of Great White and whatnot. They weren't my favorite band, but they were, top 10. I did not know that Jack Russell wore a wig. Anyways, the story ends with Alan goes back up to the hotel room and like lifts the guy's hair. There's all these drugs underneath his wig. But he makes this comment about two members of that band wore wigs from, quote, pennies. I'm like, what's this? Now I have to look, right? Because now I'm going to hunt down this thing. Penny's Rockstar Wig. P-I-N-Y-S, apostrophe S. There's a guy who made hairpieces and extensions also for the ladies, not just for the men. But like a lot of Hollywood wore pieces that were done by this guy, Penny, who had a shop in Beverly Hills and whatnot. And, there's some that anyways, that led me down a rabbit hole about rock stars and toupees and wigs. So, anyways, I mean, there's some we know, like Elton John has more hair now than he did, in the 70s. So, like, that one's obvious. I have my guesses. Actually, if you're watching this far into the video, and I'm gonna put a pinned comment down below too. Put in the comments which rock stars you think are wearing hair pieces. I mean, there's obvious ones, like Tina Turner was always very clear that she wore wigs, and that was part of her costume, and could change out hair and whatnot. So there's that. But, I'm specifically talking about the man. Although it does explain a lot, because apparently Farrah Fawcett, that famous poster, that's all extensions too. And I'm sitting there going like, I've been lied to my entire life. Here I am with my flat hair. And going like, why can't I have hair like that? Well, because it's wigs. I should have known this. I mean, back in the Maclu days, for anyone who doesn't know, I used to do industrial machine rock, electro, and all this. Like, I did not wear wigs, but I did have like clip-in hair extensions to make my hair look fatter. And I actually did some gigs like that. Especially like when my hair was all, now of course I have layers cut into it. I really should tease it up. It'll look a little poofier on camera. But back in the day, like my hair was all the same length. It was all dyed jet black. So I just got clip-in black extensions that were the right length, so that would make my hair look a little bigger. I had some even that were like little streaks of other colors and whatnot. So I look good. I had great hair on stage for a while, man. Part of me is like tempted to do that again just for pure vanity. Except I'm lazy first thing in the morning. I don't want to like I wouldn't go and have extensions weaved in. First of all, I'm too cheap. But like the clip-in ones, you can get like a full head of hair and like strips that you just clip it in, and you can get it on eBay. I'm kind of tempted. The only thing is now, of course, I've gone for like the Nikki Sixx hairdo. Not that you can tell because I don't tease it up and it's not dyed black, but like I've got it with the intention of teasing up my hair, and then I just never do. But I guess that means I'd have to get a bunch of like shorter extensions to clip in, because it would, well, I guess if I clipped in like 18-inch extensions, like it would just look like I had my hair all the same length again. But anyways, so that was one of my inspiration points. And the reason why I keep looking off to the side is I think we've seen in my vlogs what posters are in that corner. And he's one of my main candidates about who's wearing a hairpiece. I'm just saying, sometimes the front hairline is a little too perfectly straight. Anyways, so that was kind of fun. It's also gossipy, so maybe I shouldn't be reading that stuff. But I did say what I was going to give up was watching gossipy YouTube videos. Anyways, moving on. What I was posting always as some like B-roll in my vlogs was some pics from the garden. So why don't we have a couple pics from the garden? So anyways, you can have a look at what's been in bloom in the garden this week. Anyways, what's coming up this week? Well, we kind of covered that at the start of the show. We've got our Monday stream. I have the second half of Myles's L is for Lakeside Ladiesmen thing. And then also one of my viewers, we were kind of chatting about like Myles and Ricky getting into a bar fight. And I was doing it very quick and dirty marker, in my sketchbook, kind of like I do on the Tuesdays. But I thought maybe if I have time on Sunday, I think I'm going to do like a proper page based on what we were joking about last week. And then I'll ink that in the second half. And then the week after, I can just do the M spread. Tuesday, I will be working on something. I don't know what. I think I'm going to be doing greeting cards, actually. Just do some art for greeting cards that I can shrink down. So whether that'll be 2 or 3, I don't know. And then Friday, we will be working on a spread from Ricky B Goes to Sea. So, like I said, that's kind of, we're back to the Talking Head Scuttlebutt editing I think it's kind of a little more straightforward than trying to show what I'm doing in the vlogs or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I decided we're going to go back to this and we're going to stick with this. The format works in like FlossTube, so that was the idea. Why don't I apply it to art? So we're going to do that. And like I said, if you've gotten this far, thank you for watching. If you've gotten any distance, well, thank you for watching. But I guess if you didn't get all the way here, you won't hear me say thank you. But hey, like, you know the YouTube drill. We all always ask for likes and blah, blah, blah. And like I said, comment down below if you got this far, which rock star do you think is wearing a toupee or a weave or, even, whatever. I mean, I guess hair plugs kind of count. They're kind of like a permanent toupee, really. I mean, it is your own hair, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know how they do it. I think they take it from the back and then, anyways. So comment on that and we will see you throughout the week for live streams and right back here, or I don't know, maybe I'll plunk my butt on the bench next week, but somewhere for Scuttlebutt again next Saturday morning. So have a great week, everyone. Catch you soon. Bye for now.